Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So just a couple of housekeeping notes here. So the first is I just want to let you know that I have a couple of spots available right now for private coaching. And private coaching with me, it really is about taking you where you're at and moving you forward into the next phase. So if that is that you're trying to decide whether to stay or go and you need to make that decision, that we will get you from point A to point B. If that is strategizing through a high conflict divorce, that is what we'll do. If it's healing from abuse or just from a divorce, that is what we'll do. When you work with me, I work with you through effective documentation, creating concrete co-parenting plans, communication at every stage. Communication is really my sweet spot. My scripts are used all over, whether people know it or not. I create scripts for my clients all the time. And if you just need to recover and start over, I've worked with clients who, they've been through the divorce, but that emotional piece of letting go has really been challenging. And so that is another thing that I do with my private coaching clients. The beauty of private coaching is that it's yours. You get to decide. I have helped hundreds of women navigate all of these waters, divorcing, strategizing, trying to decide, healing. I have an intensely deep level of understanding and experience when it comes to all of this, the psychological and emotional aspects of the divorce and discernment processes. I also save you money. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it's very true. I have a client recently, I have it on my Instagram, and I'll link it in the show notes. But there was a client recently that through my coaching with her, she actually was saved something like $500,000 in tax liability, in spousal support that her husband was trying to get out of paying. I was able to guide her in certain strategic ways to, not accept the lowball offer that he was giving because it wasn't appropriate, and to seek the proper professionals, tax professionals, the advice from proper places to be able to save her literally $500,000. So sometimes, not always, very often, hiring a divorce coach through your divorce process, while it feels like an additional expense, can save a lot of money on the other side. Whether it's also, strategizing with me, so you're not doing it for $750 an hour with your attorney, right? We bring the strategy, we create the strategy, you present it to your attorney. And so it saves money. I'm a lot less expensive than an attorney, y'all. That's where I'm at. I have a couple of spots available right now. I've got testimonials on my site and all of that. But if you're interested in private coaching, head on over to the link in the show notes or on my website, kateanthony.com/private-coaching. There's a private coaching dropdown at the top of the page, and you'll learn all about it. Again, it's really customizable. We get to talk for an hour a week and make sure that you are in the best possible position as you move through whatever it is that you're going through, wherever you find yourself on your roadmap right now. Let me tell you about today's episode. Today, I have with me Nikki Spoelstra, otherwise known as Nikki Spo. She is the host of the amazing podcast, The Know with Nikki Spo, which I was a guest on recently. And we have really amazing conversations. We'll also link to her podcast, me on her podcast, in the show notes. Nikki is a globally top-ranked podcast host. The Know with Nikki Spo highlights the stories of individuals who are finding and celebrating their deepest sense of inner knowing in a space where it's not about knowing everything, but about coming to know ourselves. How awesome is that? She was nominated for People's Choice Podcast Award. She's up for 2 coveted Gracie Awards, which honor exceptional women in podcasting and journalism. She's a single mom of 3, divorced mom of 3. She's overcome tough life experiences with ferocity and grace and is a compelling speaker of truths. So true. So, check it out. Here's my conversation with Nikki Spo. Nikki, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about all the things.
Kate, I'm so excited to be here. I loved hosting you on my show, The Know with Nikki Spo, and it's really exciting to be on your show. And I love everything that you're about and what you're doing for women and people everywhere. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. It was so great when I was on your show. We just it was like a gab fest. So we were all already like, oh my God, we have to do more. So this is super fun to have you here.
Awesome.
I think that one of the most pressing things that I hear, certainly from my audience and from women in my Facebook group, my clients, right, is like, how am I going to start over? How am I going to will I be alone forever? How? Yeah. And usually when I hear that question, my response partly is, what if you are? Right? Like, let's take a look at that. And so I guess I want to put this to you, reinventing yourself after spending a life with somebody and starting over again. How has that been for you? And how have you found yourself in this process?
Kate, I think that I've been through a lot of stuff in my life, right? Like I've been through a lot of traumatic things like from my childhood. And I want to kind of like give a backstory of that. Like I had a lot of traumatic experiences with my mom. I didn't want to become a mom. And here I am, a mom of 3, a single mom of 3. I'm an only child. There was a lot of bad stuff that happened in my childhood when I was growing up in my home, and I was always looking for an escape. I turned to dance and performance as an escape. And that was as a child and as a teenager and as a young adult, even I worked professionally as a dancer. But I always was really placed a lot of importance on other people loving me as a sense of to determine what my personal value was. Right. 100%. So I'm saying that because it's relevant to how do you move through then getting a divorce when your whole life, what you've known about your own sense of self-worth is tied into how much or how another person loves you. And now make that not just you move on from one end, right? You're a child and how much your parents love you and how they treat you defines your self-worth, right? And then you move in as you grow into an adult and you find maybe romantic partners and your friendships and how those make you feel and the sense of self and value and worth that brings you. And I struggled with that my whole life. And it wasn't, Kate, until I got sober that I had hit my personal rock bottom.
Amen, sister.
There was a point, and the trigger warning to anybody who struggles with this, but I came to a point where I felt so low about myself that I didn't want to live anymore. And it's not that I wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to die. I just didn't think I was worthy of living. I was yeah. I don't deserve this life. And there was a point in time where I was my kids deserve someone better than me. And that's how low I thought of myself. And getting sober really changed that, to rediscover myself and have the courage to look at myself and really address my flaws and my faults and the things that I didn't like about myself, and have the courage to actually take steps in the right direction to improve myself and my life and my choices. But in doing so, to get to the root of your question is how do you reinvent yourself? You do so while you're scared as shit to do it. You just,
that's right.
You do it scared. It
that's
takes
right.
amount of courage, and I think for people who've spent like their lifetime or any, long amount of years with a partner, I think it's easy for anybody to wrap their identity, especially with a traumatic background, right? Where you you want to cling to somebody for your identity, right? Like that's a very, very big possibility and probability for a lot of people who have had traumatic childhoods or backgrounds, that you're craving that. Like if anything, it feels like if I cling to a person for them to give me a sense of self-worth or identity or structure, that to me in a world of chaos, that can feel very safe. And so how do you move through detaching yourself from that? You do it while you're scared. You look with it. You have to really just be willing to do it and make a fool out of yourself or hurt through it. And I have to say, Kate, that in my personal experience, despite everything that I've been through, I consider myself an eternal optimist. Like maybe I'm a delusional optimist. I don't know.
I always say, what did I call myself? I called myself not like a hopeful romantic, or my mom was like, it's not that you're an optimist, it's that you're an idealist. Right. And I think that was really, I felt that. I was like, yes, I do. I idealize situations. And maybe that's from, growing up in trauma and all of that stuff. But I always want to, I always kind of see the best in people. I see the, for better or worse, by the way, because, I think that keeps us in unhealthy relationships for longer than perhaps we should. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I just think that I believe that things are going to work out for me. And there's a quote, I forget who says it, but it's like, I'm kind of a paranoid in reverse. I believe that people are conspiring to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I lead to let down because I'm like, everybody's trying to make me happy. And then I get disappointed because I'm like, you didn't
make me happy.
but also what I've learned is especially as a sober person, I'm like, my happiness comes from within me. I am the joy. I am the special thing. I am the beauty and the love. I am those things. So how could I not have it in my life? So reinventing myself, I'm like, but she's here. She's here. It's been good. Things have been really good. Things have been really happy. And I think that who's going to love me? Me. Me.
Yes,
I'm going to right. And before we started, we had a little bit of backstory talk before we started recording. It's people can very easily fall into this, what if I'm alone forever? Well, what if I am alone forever? You know what? I happen to really like myself and my company. I really I like who I am. I don't think I'm a perfect person. I think I'm an imperfect person who works every day to be better, but I like myself. I like my own company. And Kate, to be honest, one of the best things in my life that I feel right now is that I do not need anything. I know that I've got me. I feel so confident in my ability to care, love, provide for myself and my kids. I don't need it. So now as I move forward into a dating world, the checklist is totally different, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Person. My kids happen to have an amazing dad.
Right.
Blessed.
Right.
Hashtag blessed. We're so happy. My kids have an amazing father. Okay, cool. So my checklist now looks a lot different. Do I laugh my ass off with a person? Do we have similar interests? I know it sounds silly, but I'm big on music. I'm do we like to listen to the same types of music and laugh at the same types of comedy? And, not everything has to be the same. I think that there's so many beautiful things to being different and letting somebody show you new things. But my checklist is totally different. It's really centered around can I laugh with this person? Can I travel well with this person? Do I have a deep, meaningful connection? Can I be myself intimately? Do I feel safe being myself in the way that I express myself, whether that's the hairstyle I want to wear, or the makeup I want to wear, the way that I dress, the things that I believe in, the community efforts that I'm involved in. Do I feel like this person likes me for who I am? That's the checklist. That's the box.
That's right. That's right. Not as opposed to, I think, earlier in my journey with this, right? It was do they like me? Do they like me? Do they like me? That was
Yeah.
the only question I was asking myself is, do they
Like
like me? Do they
forever.
like me? Right.
Waiting to be chosen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Waiting to be chosen. Not taking my own temperature, not ever asking myself, do you like him?
Right. Do I want to be around this person?
Right. I remember I was dating some people early in my divorce, like really early. And I was dating these guys, and, all I would talk about in therapy was sort of, whether they liked me or whether they called, or how basically how anxious I felt in these relationships. And my therapist finally said, like, feels like you're really focused on what they think of you. Do you like him? And I sort of like sat back and objectively looked at it. I was like, no.
Right.
Like, literally no, that we did no shared values. No. And P.S. at that time, I didn't actually know what my values were. I didn't know who I was. And I think that this is right. And I was seeking my identity through others because I had never been given a roadmap for my own identity. Right. And so I think that I want to kind of back up, right? Because it's all great for us to be like, I was like this, and now I am this person, and I ask these questions, but like, how do we get there? Like, what is the process? How do you go from someone with tons of trauma, a lot of codependency, getting yourself, your identity, created by others, to somebody who has self-esteem and knows exactly who they are and doesn't settle and is using their own picker to choose as opposed to waiting to be chosen? Like, what happened in the interim for you?
For me, it was a lot of like screaming until I felt like I was heard. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to realize that, like, if I have to scream to be heard, I'm just in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm in the wrong place. If I have to like yell to be heard, whether it's about my needs or what I want, I don't want to be there. My friends and I, we talk. My friends are like super interested in my dating life, and they want to know everything. And it's exciting.
Sure. Yeah.
And
right.
But like, I remember at first when I started meeting people, I was like, oh my gosh, is this guy going to be the one? I'm at a Build-A-Bear shop right now. I am like, I want a little bit of this, I want a little bit of that. So I'm like, I have met so many wonderful people that I'm like, you know what? Look, Kate, I know that nobody's perfect. You're going to like Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And she wrote a wonderful book called Big Magic also. And in the book, Big Magic, she says something about like, anywhere you go, you're going to have to eat a shit sandwich, no matter what, whether that's in a job, a relationship, anything. Like, there's always going to be a shit sandwich that you're going to have to eat. And it just depends on like, what type of shit sandwich are you willing to eat? What are the trade-offs? Like, what are you willing to sacrifice? So I say that because there's no perfect person. No matter what, like, I don't care what anybody looks like on the outside. Every relationship has its problems. It has its problems, and it's all relative. So even the most perfect relationship, even if it's like worst problem is like eons better than what your worst problem is and your terrible relationship, like, it's still a big problem in that relationship. So nobody's perfect, right?
Right.
No man, no woman is perfect. And there's no partner, I don't think, who can give you every single thing that you want. I just happen to think the more people I meet, the more likely I am to figure out what I like. When I was in a place where I'm like, I don't even know what I like anymore. I don't know what I like. What do I like? I don't know.
That's right.
I'm like, well, you meet people. And that doesn't mean you sleep with every people. You don't sleep with every person.
You do not sleep with them all, ladies. Is everyone listening?
I wish, like, people would really need to, like, I actually have hosted this gentleman named Evan Mark Katz, and he like totally called me and my listeners out on this. And he was like, you should when you're dating, you should have like a harem of men who are like trying to date. This doesn't mean that you're sleeping with all of them and being intimate with all of them. This means that you are getting to know, like, straight up getting to know people to see, what do I like? I had the opportunity to meet some very, very lovely individuals. And I'm like, you know what? I like this quality about this person. I don't really like these other 5 qualities though. Like, so
that's right.
This is going to be a no for me, but I really do realize about myself that I like this other quality.
Yes.
I remember like kind of like whining to my friends, oh my gosh, but doesn't have the other qualities. They're like, he's not the only dude in the world. Like he has the quality. Like there's bound to be another person who has a quality that you like. And so the more people you meet, the more you start to learn about yourself. And another thing, Kate, that I want to touch on, I come from the traumatic background, right? So that means I am highly triggerable. Even though I'm in therapy, I work a 12-step program of recovery. I have trauma bonding experiences from past relationships, plural, right? So
Same girl.
highly triggerable, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
guess what? You don't learn how to deal with your triggers by being alone in your house. You learn how to deal with your triggers by actually going out and experiencing your triggers in real time. And I know that sucks because they don't feel good. They don't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be triggered. It doesn't feel good. But you learn how to move through your triggers with other, hopefully compassionate individuals by experiencing the triggers.
Well, and also being in whatever form of recovery, whether that's therapy, 12-step, all of the above, right? By knowing that like, oh, it's my trigger, right? You're not out there blaming all these people for triggering you. You're going, oh shit. Look, this is why I love dating as an experiment, right? Like you said, like you're building your checklist. You're like, oh shit, right? No, that's actually really important to me. You learn that as you're going through the process. You're also going, oh shit, look, there's a trigger I didn't know I had, right? And you're absolutely right. You're not going to find those. My therapist always used to say to me, everybody's amazing when they're not in a relationship. It's when you start dating that these things emerge. And that's when you take them back to therapy to work them out. Like you take them to your meetings, you take them wherever, and you take responsibility and you look at yourself, right? And also it could be like, wow, I have a really serious trigger about that. I actually don't think I can date someone like that. And you learn. This is like a learning process. And one of the things I firmly believe is that self-esteem is built through self-knowledge. It's almost like we're chasing the wrong thing, right? I want confidence, I want self-esteem, but we're bypassing the process of building it, which is learning who you are, learning what you like, learning what you don't like. And you do that by going out in the world and experiencing things and keeping the focus on yourself, right? As opposed to like, does he like me? Does he like me? It's like, no. What am I feeling in this experience? What's happening to me in this relationship? How do I feel? Right? And that's a process. It's a long process.
The theme and the tagline of my podcast is called, people mix it up. It's not called In the Know, because I am not in the know. I actually don't know shit. I just happen to like talk to experts and people who know more than I do. And I want to know the things, but it's really not about knowing everything. It's about coming to know ourselves. And like, I think that you could have said about it. It's like a hugely transformative experience in life when you come to know your deep sense of inner knowing, because it's like kind of like what I was saying before in the beginning, where it's like you are so deeply rooted in who you are, that you move differently in the world when you know who you are.
That's right.
And it's not until one day you wake up and know. You don't just wake up one day. It's like a series of practice and things happening in your life and how you respond to them and contemplation. And I always say that everybody should work a 12-step program, it's so transformative. Like I'm talking about like taking a personal inventory of like the things I actually don't like about myself, because it's wonderful to be like, yeah, I'm the shit. I'm the best. I'm a great catch. No shit. I think I'm a catch. Yes, of course. Good. There's a ton of stuff I don't like about myself also. And the two things can be true. Like I can have enough humility to be like, you know what? I fucked up in my marriage. I messed up in my marriage in XYZ ways, right? I need to have enough humility to look at myself and say, you know what? I too was a problem in my last relationship. It wasn't just all one person. I am not a victim here. I think also adopting the mindset that we are not a victim to our life as adults. Like, is it possible that we were victims of any type of abuse? That is possible. That's very real. There are real victims. We also get to be our own hero. We also get to save ourselves.
Right. That's right.
Hugely important for people to like move from a state of victimhood, which is valid, right? Especially if you've been victimized, like legitimately victimized. But to move out of the victim mindset and get into like your hero era, like get into a place where you are willing to put in the work to save yourself, to live a better life. And it is in your control. Not everything is in your control, but there's a lot of things that are in our control.
That's right. And that's the beauty of the inventory, right? Is that you get to, it's not just what are the things I hate about myself, right? It's then like, what is that triggering in me? What am I afraid of? What is the fear? What's everything underneath it? And then coming face to face with that stuff. And, for people who are like, I want to do that kind of inventory. That sounds cool. That is part of the 12-step program. I also have adopted the inventory in my programs because I find it so powerful. So in my like, should I stay or should I go program, you can't make a decision about whether you stay or go without doing that kind of inventory, because it's really the crux of like, is it him or is it me? Right? Because we're going to give up. Like if it's him, like, okay, cool. We're going to own that and that's fine. But if it's me, then I also need to take responsibility, right? Make amends, own shit for myself so that I can move forward.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's both people.
That's right. Exactly.
It takes two to break a relationship and it takes two to heal one.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard because the control piece is that like, you can only control yourself. You can't control somebody else. You can't control their commitment. You can't control like their willingness or their perspective on how they see it or the damage that's already been done that maybe they're not willing or able to recover from.
Mm-hmm.
You can't control that. You cannot control that. And so part of like when we talk about steps and amends, like we talk about an inventory and amends and, making a list of the people I've harmed and be willing to make amends to them. Like you can do that, right? Like you can apologize. You have no control over whether or not somebody accepts your apology. I've been there. Sometimes the damage is done. Like all you can do, like you can't apologize to somebody for them. You apologize for yourself.
And it's also not just an apology, right? This is why it's called an amends, right? And this is why I think so many of my listeners, like one of the things that they, it's like, well, he apologized or I apologized to him for blah. But are you changing the behavior? Are you acknowledging the impact that your action had?
That's a big part of it. Like the impact of the behavior.
The impact is so huge. God love him, my ex-husband, he would apologize to me. And this is a man who, at the time when we were married, he's like 32 years sober now. But like, so when we were married, he was like, 15, 20, whatever. And he would apologize to me all the time. And then he'd do the same shit the next day. And I would be like, I don't think you're doing this right. I don't think this is how it works. And now he acknowledges that and he has moved forward and made tons of amends. But like, we're not all perfect and we're not all, working this the same way, but this is about ourselves, right? This is about, I always talk about keeping our side of the street squeaky clean, right? I don't care. It doesn't matter what he's doing. What are you doing? How are you showing up?
It also makes me think about life after the divorce, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you have children with somebody, you have to co-parent with them.
Yeah. It's
like that relationship is going to have different versions. It takes a while for people's dust to settle. Like in any uncoupling, it can take some time for dust to settle. Yep. And you just have to kind of like ride that wave and be willing to know that like good things take time. And if you want this to ultimately be a good thing, you got to let it take some time.
That's right.
Shared a life with someone whom you presumably loved, and wanted things to work out with. Just like that good thing took time and maybe something, whatever happened, to lead to an uncoupling or an exit of a marriage or partnership. If you wanted to get to a better place, like you have to allow that the space and the grace to do that too. So I think like most people just want a quick fix.
Yeah. And, I will say that to people all the time. Like I've been divorced for 15 years. My relationship with my ex-husband has gone through, a lifetime of iterations and processes and points where we weren't speaking and points where we were best friends and points where everything fell apart. Right. And, I think we've come to a good place at this point. But again, it's taken 15 years. It's taken 15 years where he's like, hey, I'm taking the kids to dinner on the corner. Come meet us. Cool. I go down and, we have a laugh riot dinner for a couple of hours. And, like that's where we're at. But that is, don't compare the, midpoint probably of my journey to the beginning of yours, right? There is a process to go through, and it won't always, wherever you're at right now with it, it will not always be this way. Just know that it will continue to change. Right. And it ebbs and flows forever.
And I think it's okay. Like, and I think that like you mentioned something about comparing, like some relationships won't get there.
That's right. 100%.
You have to boundary up. You have to set your own boundaries. You have to set a standard for yourself of how you want to have like kind, healthy communication. And it's okay if you're not best friends. Like
100%. That's right.
Like that doesn't have to be your thing. Like, I think that like a lot of people, I think social media like romanticizes that.
Absolutely.
Great, because like, of course I want that, but it's also okay for it not to be that way.
Well, and also like, why do you want it that way? Right. Let's like, let's think about, right. Let's unpack why you want it that way. Because if this is a person who has been unhealthy in your life and has hurt you and has disrespected you and has not made amends for that, or all of the things, like, why would you want to be friends? Why do you want to be friends with this person? Right.
You don't have to be.
No.
Like, and that's where you're like, that's where we're stepping out of like the victim mindset. You don't have to be. Like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
That's right. Well, and I always say like the first thing you need to do, actually, I think, is to separate almost more, right? I say, I think that the first step should be parallel parenting in almost all separations, so that you give yourself the time to grow and to heal and all of the things, so that then if you decide to be friends, if you decide to come together in a more of a collaborative co-parenting relationship, it's from a place of maturity, healed, processed, all of that, as opposed to default or fear.
It's interesting that that's your take on it. It's like if my listeners are listening to this, which I'm sure will be, like, do you know because I mean, I know what the difference between parallel parenting is and co-parenting is, but can you a little bit?
Well, yeah, sure. So parallel parenting is really like you're each on your own track. You're on separate tracks with your kids. You're not talking every single day. Maybe you have a co-parenting app, maybe you have a shared family calendar. You're talking about the kids only, but that's it. You're really living separate lives. Co-parenting is a little bit more intermingled, where, like my ex-husband, it's more collaborative. You're kind of in it together. I think that depending on safety levels, right? Like if you're dealing with domestic violence, parallel parenting should be like, you're not going to the same school meetings together. You're going to talk to the school and say, it's not safe. It's not emotionally or physically safe for me to be in a meeting with my former spouse. So I'm going to unfortunately have to request that you have 2 separate meetings, things like that. In regular parallel parenting, you can probably show up to the same meetings and things like that, but you're not going out to coffee afterwards. You are emotionally separating yourselves. I always say this, that we legally separate, we financially separate, we, physically separate, we forget to emotionally untangle. And it's sort of like the co-parenting version of going no contact. We don't have the luxury of going no contact most of the time.
Right, totally.
So it's really only having points of contact when absolutely necessary.
Important distinction. Like I think in, at least online, like there's not a lot of talk about it. There's not a lot of talk about parallel parenting versus co-parenting, and like which one might be better for a given relationship. But I think those are really, really important things to consider.
Sure. Do you talk about this? I mean, you are co-parenting at this point.
Yeah, we co-parent. And we're both like super involved in our kids' lives, and everybody, it works.
But it's a process, right? It takes time to get to a place where you're like comfortable with it, where you're not like, stewing in your resentments every time you're in the room with each other, right?
Something someone said to me once during my healing journey, there's got to be a point where you're like, okay, I've reached my quota for thinking about this, whatever it is for the day. Like I have now reached the quota. we're going to put this in a drawer and now we're not going to think about it anymore because you've reached the quota. Because it's easy to ruminate about everything. Like if you think that kids trigger you as an individual, I know that my middle child triggers me the most because he is most like me. He is like me 2.0, and
right.
See all of the great things and all the things that drive me crazy about myself in my child. And I'm like, right.
Sure. Yeah.
But you think about what then that does when they also have those traits of their parent, right? Other parent. And so you're like,
mine is a mini, like he has always been like a mini version of his father in so many ways. All of the best qualities of his dad, all of them. But, when we first got divorced and he would come home, first of all, like he would come home, like wearing his dad's cologne, come back from being at his dad's house in like when he was like 13, like wearing and I'll be like, Jesus Christ. And then he came back wearing his clothes and I was like,
Whether it's in regards to my children, whether like it triggers me, in a co-parenting situation, I think like one thing that I've carried and a piece of advice that I would probably give to other people, like divorcees, is to really look at yourself and be like, you know what, I've reached my quota of thinking about this for the day. Whether it was something like maybe it was a disagreement that you had with your co-parent about what to do for whatever, or maybe it's something that you're ruminating on from your past and like the relationship.
One of the things that I hear, my friend Tina Swithins talks about this a lot, is about sort of putting your divorce on a shelf, like as you're going through the process. And she talks about this while you're going through like a high conflict divorce, is that you're kind of putting it on the shelf, like put it away, put the binders away, do it literally and figuratively, that do not spend all of your time while you're going through this process focusing on it because it'll drive you crazy. And I think that's the same thing as you're going through. And that's sort of part of why I like the parallel parenting first perspective, because it gives you that space. It gives you time to focus on yourself, to not be ruminating about what he's doing and what, is he coming to the meeting and what's his and who is he dating and all, like, forget it. Don't infuse yourself with that. Give yourself the time to like come back to yourself.
It's kind of funny because people will ask me sometimes like, oh, have you heard of anything? And I'm like, I don't seek it out.
And by the way, please don't bring it to me.
I'm over here. I have 3 kids. I'm taking care of me. I'm taking care of my children. Like I'm focused on peace is the bag for me.
That's right. People don't understand that. People ask like, oh, have you heard? Or like, I saw him out with, it's like, don't bring that to my door. Like, I don't need to know that. It's like a little shit stir.
People can't help themselves. And I think that like we as women, as just people in general, need to get better at setting boundaries around what people are welcome to ask you. And that's something I've had to do, right? Because like a lot of people ask me a lot of questions. Like, I don't talk about that. And also something that I want to share is that like, there's also this element that whatever happened in your relationship is sacred. And like, you reserve the right to let that be between you, your ex-partner, and God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter how angry you are about it, no matter how, people don't get to be privy to all of the information.
That's
like people
don't, they do not.
Like you can talk about the fire that you walked through. I talk about the fact that I've walked through the fire, right, in my life, but like, you don't get to know what that fire looked like for me. That's for me. Like I reserve the right to keep some things just for myself.
Yeah, you get to decide, right? You get to be the owner of your story. You get to own your narrative. It does not have to align with your ex's.
Totally.
And you, like you said, like you get to choose who you share it with, right? I sort of think of it, there's like, there are rungs. You've got your inner circle, and then there's like the medium circle, and then there's the outer circle. And like, you get to decide what story you're going to tell each of those people, and who gets to know what. That's yours, totally your prerogative. There are different levels of, high profile, whatever, right? But I mean, in your case, this is a, more public situation, more high profile but even people like, somebody who's maybe married to their pastor, the town pastor, or like somebody who is, even if the community is smaller and they're more high profile in their smaller community, right? there's similar things that they have to consider.
I think everybody's pain, it's so subjective, everybody's experience. I think that divorces and the idea of divorce has potential to carry so much shame and judgment as it is. And there's we do that to ourselves more than anything. Think about how many people stay in marriages because they're ashamed of quitting or ashamed of it failing, this perceived failure,
That's right.
And we put that on ourselves. And I think that no matter where you are on the spectrum of being well-known or a public figure or just a regular family down the block,
right?
I think everybody carries that to an extent. And, it just so happened that my family wasn't my family of origin wasn't the type of family to judge or shame or whatever. But there are tons of families out there that their biggest source of shame comes from their own parents.
That's right.
And their own family members. So it goes back to this idea that wherever you are, you're going to have to eat a shit sandwich. Everybody's going through some shit. Everybody's going through it, and I think it's a lesson in just being compassionate when, this whole fumble the bag comment came out on social media that, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but internet trolls came after me and were you fumbled the bag and all this stuff. And I remember saying to people, you don't know anything about anything. You can't come to my page and spew hatred.
What was that about? I did not see that. So tell me. And if for listeners who didn't.
Social media people trolls were coming to my page saying that I fumbled the bag.
Because of your divorce? Because getting divorced? Or
yeah. And
I see.
Right. I responded that people should be kinder. They don't know anything. People That's don't know anything. And I'm not going to, and if it was bait for me to say something, I wasn't going to, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you always reserve the right to not say anything. You always
That's
reserve
right.
the right to have no opinion. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to be mean. And so whether that's on a big scale, and for me, that felt like a big scale because a lot of people were paying attention to it. Micro versions of that happen to people all the time.
It's true. It's true.
Every pocket of life, because anybody who's a mom knows that there's that person in the grocery store line giving them unsolicited advice about what to do when their baby is born. It happens all the time. You just have to put blinders on and be again, boundary up and be you don't get to do that with me. And that was my ultimate message. I was you do not get to come to my platform. You want to talk about me online? Go to some blog or go to Reddit or whatever. Do that if it makes you feel good, but you don't get to come to my page. This is my social media home, and you don't get to bring that here.
That's right.
If somebody told me when I'm pregnant, well, you should really have this type of birth. I don't know you. It's okay. You don't get to have, your opinion holds no weight in my life.
One of my favorite stories about people giving unsolicited advice to pregnant people was my girlfriend was pregnant, and she was actually pregnant with her third, and we were at Disneyland, and I don't know why she came with us, but she did. And she was sitting on, if she was because it was her third, right? So she's at Disneyland, her other kids are off with her husband and us and whatever. We're having a grand old time. And she is sitting on the bench, and this woman comes up and she starts telling her oh, you're pregnant. Oh my goodness. And she starts giving her the rundown of how to have a baby. Yvonne just turned to her and she's this is my third child, but thank you for you don't know shit. You don't know shit. Also, none of your fucking business, but I love, that it was her third, and she was giving her information as if it was her first. It's fuck off. So being on the other side and sort of having walked, as you said, walked through the fire, what do you want women to know?
Life gets better and better. It's just life can get better and better and better.
Yeah.
The divorce, the relationship ending, whatever, that's not your end. This is the beginning of your next chapter of your story. Kate, it comes back to this identity thing. It's we wrap our identities up in this one thing. And some people, a lot of men, do it with their career, right? And then what happens if there's layoffs, or what happens if they get fired? What happens when you're no longer attached to that? That's why you have to be so strong, rooted in who you are on a soul level, because once I'm in that position, it's literally anything could happen to me. And I just know that better days are ahead. So, like, having walked through my own fires of my life, the multiple fires in my life, I truly firmly believe that my life just keeps getting better and better. You know what? I take good care of myself. I treat my body with kindness and respect. I'm good to it. I'm good to my mind. I do things that stimulate my mind and my heart and my spirituality. I love being a mom, and that's not to say that every day being a mom is easy or my favorite, because some days are really hard and I don't like it. Right? I take care of my shit. And when I do that, I feel organized. I feel happy. I get enough sleep. I get enough water. I look forward to my life. I look forward to the opportunities around the corner. When I date, I'm not dating like, oh, here, I'm going to run into another asshole. I think I'm just getting to know another human being who's different from who I am.
Yeah.
And so far, I've met wonderful people who I'm like, you know what? That was nice to meet that person. Whether that works out or not, who knows? Good thing, bad thing, who knows? I just know that my life is going to keep getting better and better if I have this attitude.
I love it. Thank you so much, Nikki. Where can everybody find you? Obviously, The Know with Nikki Spo is on all platforms.
It is. It's called The Know with Nikki Spo, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on YouTube. I stream videos on YouTube, anywhere you listen to your podcast. But I'm on Instagram at Nikki Spo and at The Know with Nikki Spo. And I answer like all my DMs. So like when people have questions, like I'm your girly. I'm a girl's girl. I don't gatekeep information. I love talking about like fashion, lifestyle, motherhood, parenting, all of the things, so that's like what my social media is about. But my podcast is where you're going to get the real meat and potatoes. And we talk about some really, really important topics in life for women.
Thank you so much for all of your wisdom. I love it. I love talking to you. I just think you're a breath of fresh air for women going through hard shit. And I appreciate you sharing so openly and honestly about how you've walked through all the fires.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.